pinned for alterations. A suit forgives nothing. That's the first lesson you learn behind a cutting table, chalk in hand and fabric sprawled like a map that refuses to admit it needs borders. Cloth remembers every touch, every hesitation you make with shears. When I teach apprentices, I tell them the same thing about people. The wrong measurement pins you to the wrong story for years. My name is Theo, and I make the kind of suits people imagine themselves into. My shop sits on a side street where the awnings have outlived 3 mayors and the cobblestones never learned to behave. The window is a conversation between oak and glass. The bell over the door is a tenor. I keep my tape around my neck like a priest keeps a stole, and I treat fitting rooms like confessionals. Men stand taller once the basted seams suggest another version of themselves. Women when they come for tuxedos, and they do more than you guess, carry a different kind of permission in their shoulders. I ask questions with my hands and answer with thread. I met Eliza on a Tuesday that smelled like rain too lazy to fall. She arrived with a canvas bag and the kind of wool only money buys without asking for your opinion. The bag thumped onto my cutting table. "Black Barathea," she said, breath slightly too quick, lashes wet from a mist that hadn't committed to anything. A tux, peak lapel 5 centimeters, double vent, satin facing you won't be ashamed of, and a waistcoat that behaves. "For you," I asked, because her measurements were already sketching themselves into my head. My tape knew before the rest of me caught up. "For a man," she said, then laughed low, warm. "And for me, the waistcoat." "2 clients," I offered. "1 garment and a half," she said, with the mischievous precision of someone used to making decisions that appear accidental. She touched the Barathea as if she were soothing it. The ring on her finger was old money set in a new setting, diamonds like small shouts. "Tell me your name." "Theo," I said. "You." "Liesel," she said, and then, with a tilt of the mouth I would later learn meant honesty was about to make a cameo, "Eliza. I used to be Liesel. I kept the habit of saying it when I'm about to ask for something I shouldn't." "What shouldn't you ask for?" She looked up at the fitting room curtain, at the mirror that doubled us without mercy, then back at me. "A tuxedo that looks best hung on the back of a chair." "Bespoke garments prefer bodies," I said. "Chairs are for the morning after." "There is a morning after?" she asked lightly. "In my experience," I said, "there's always an after. It's the during that people lie about." She smiled then, real, unguarded. "Good. I'm tired of during being the only tense anyone knows." I measured her because I'm superstitious and like to start with the person whose mouth tells me the truth. She stepped onto the low dais in her silk trousers and a blouse that had never seen an apology. I set the tape at the notch of her collarbone and it fell like a sentence that knows where it's going. There's a point, just under the arm, where the inch of skin is neither quite public nor private. The tape hummed there and her breath caught, barely, and my hand steadied itself as if it had learned the room. I noted the circumference of her waist as she exhaled, wrote numbers that felt faintly treasonous, and told myself it was work. Work, I have learned, will let you call many things by its name. We pinned a muslin to dream on. She raised her arms and the fabric confessed where it wanted to pull. I slipped 2 fingers between her shoulder and the cloth, easing the seam forward, and she said, not looking at me, "Do you ever write rules down, Theo?" "Rules keep seams from splitting," I said. "They're less effective on people." "Let's try anyway," she said, voice almost amused. "You don't sew for my husband. We don't make each other smaller with stories. If wanting happens, we say it before, not after. We don't humiliate. The work stays holy. We keep a door open in our heads even if our hands forget." "Is there a husband?" I asked. It felt foolish and felt necessary. There is a marriage, she said. Not the same thing lately. I finished pinning then, because my body wasn't interested in making the next move before my life caught up. She left the Barathea and numbers behind and went out into a day that had decided to rain after all. When the bell landed from the bounce of the door, the room felt like a mouth that had just remembered a name. 2 days later, a man came in with a face full of victory too smooth to be fresh. He looked like he had exchanged most of himself for charm and found charm to be a poor currency at odd hours. "Victor Harrow," he said to the room. His handshake wanted to sign a deal with my bones. "I need 6 suits in 6 weeks. Public life accelerated. I'm being asked to look like what I've always been." "Congratulations," I said. I had seen him in photographs with people who spent other people's money politely. "Have we met?" "Not properly," he said. "I feel we know each other already. City this size." His cologne was a stadium pretending to be a poem. He selected a charcoal that liked power too much. When I pinned the basted jacket at his shoulder, the tape knew something my brain refused to memorize. Victor's scapula and Eliza's told the same story from different sides. He came alone to his second fitting. He came with a woman in a red dress to his third, a woman who ran a fingertip down the satin facing on Victor's lapel as if checking for sharpness. She left a print I couldn't see but could feel anyway, like heat on metal. "He's cooking for donors," she said to me as if I was the concierge to a more expensive life. "We need the midnight to be midnight." "We can deepen the charcoal," I said, "which is tailor for. I know how to make you look thinner and meaner." She smiled and turned away and didn't touch anything else in my shop. Eliza returned after hours. The city had put itself to bed, and the street outside my window was a polite rumor. She wore a dress like a firm yes, and carried a bottle of something French that believed in peaches. We drank a glass in the workroom with our elbows brushing near the pressing table. The muslin had become wool by then, its lines no longer imaginary. I slipped it over her shoulders and watched her mouth go quiet in the mirror. "Better than forgiveness," she said, more to herself than to me. She lifted her hair and I pinned the collar with fast hands. There are moments in this job when desire and craft uncouple and then recouple in a way that makes me believe in simple gods. I reached for the hem and she placed her palm on the back of my wrist and held me there, not stopping me, not yet, just telling me we were measuring something else now. "Before," she said, "not after." "Before," I agreed. Kissing her felt like discovering a pocket you, sewn by instinct, and had forgotten you made. The room was a religion iron's hush, the wool's clean animal warmth, the soft click of pins in a dish like rain beginning. Her mouth tasted faintly of the wine and more strongly of her, something a little wild under the polish. I slid my hand under the jacket to the small of her back, and she rose onto her toes with that small, involuntary sound that could ruin a man's discipline forever if he let it. We stopped where there would be no comedy to continue. We breathed. She pressed her forehead to my temple, not the dramatic kiss, the other kind, the one that allows two people to be smart again after being stupid in exactly the right measure. "2 more fittings," I said like a fool. "And a waistcoat for me," she said, sharp enough to explain myself. "Explain to whom?" I asked. She looked at my cutting table, where Victor's pattern pieces lived like sly maps. "To the version of me that keeps standing in the wrong room because it has better lighting." We built the tuxedo for Victor the way you build a dam, one careful, arrogant decision at a time. On fitting day 4, he asked for a hidden pocket in the facing, a little stitched space only his left thumb would know how to find. "For a ring," he said, then smiled at his own performance. "No, a note, a number, useful blankness. You don't need the story." I nodded because that is an agreement my profession makes nightly. I sewed the pocket with a barely darker silk thread, a line nobody would notice who didn't understand that some men want secret compartments not because they need to hide things, but because they need to believe they could. Eliza came for her waistcoat. I put her in it and it treated her body like a fact. When she buttoned it, her fingers were steady. Mine weren't. She turned in the mirror and the back belt pinched an inch toward the center, persuading the line into authority. "He'll know," she said. "Victor?" I asked. My voice made his name an accident. "He always knows before and after," she said. "He's terrible at during." She adjusted the collar, and the little triangle at the bottom of the lapel settled like an answer. The gala landed like a plane designed by people who had never been afraid of flying. My tuxedos walked that room on a dozen bodies. The lights wanted to kiss enamel and found throats instead. Eliza wore her waistcoat under a black jacket that pretended it belonged to someone else. She looked like appetite taught manners. Victor looked like victory. Everyone had agreed to pretend was charming. He moved through the donors with the ease of a man who had never had to rehearse applause. I was furniture, invited and invisible. Part of me watched my seams keep their promises. Part of me watched Eliza watch the balcony doors. When she slipped out, I followed at a coward's distance, carrying a needle book in my pocket because habit is a domestic animal. We stood at opposite ends of the balcony and let the river explain itself. The city looked delicious and far away, the way cities do when you remember you don't owe them anything after all. "We have 10 minutes," she said without drama. "He is touring the kitchen. He tour kitchens when he needs to be adored by people who cannot afford to dislike him." I reached for her and she met me halfway. The kiss tasted different under the night, quieter, more certain. My hand slid under her jacket and found the line of the waistcoat's back, the crisp V like a signature. She pressed her palm flat to the front of my chest, fingers curled slightly as if to hold the shape of my ribs. We weren't teenagers in a stairwell. We were adults finishing a sentence. When she broke away, her breath made a cloud that went up and disappeared. "No humiliations," she said, soft but stern. "We don't insult what we've built by making it public." "I don't want public," I said. "I want true." "True gets expensive," she said. "He will forgive me whatever he engineers. He forgives to hear himself speak kindly." She touched the satin on her lapel the way some people touch a throat where a necklace used to be. "Help me find a life where I don't need to be spectacular in order to be safe." I did the small, brave thing. I reached into my pocket and pressed a key into her palm. It was silver and simple. "Back door," I said. "My shop at night is a cathedral. There's a kettle that whistles like a flirt. 2 rooms and neither demands anything you're not willing to offer." She looked at the key for one heartbeat too long and moved it to her waistcoat pocket, the one I had sewn invisible for her, the one only the two of us knew how to find. "You always leave a seam in your life that could come out," she said. "Tailors are optimists." "Tailors are cowards who learned how to be useful," I said. "Either way, I'm grateful," she said, and kissed the corner of my mouth the way you bless a threshold. The end wasn't a rupture. It was a hem. After the gala, Eliza came to the shop exactly twice after midnight. Once to sit on my cutting table with her legs swinging, telling stupid jokes until the kettle scolded us into tea and honesty. Once to lie with me on the workroom rug and let the ceiling make promises on our behalf we had no intention of keeping. We did not undress entirely. We let mouth say enough. We let hands learn what respect can feel like when desire is disciplined. She left both times before the street learned our names. Victor's 6th suit delivered itself to the mirror like an accusation. He asked whether I'd seen his wife that week. I said I see many people in mirrors and far fewer in my head. He laughed. "You understand the city," he said. It runs on discretion. It runs on alterations, I said. I sewed the last button on his sleeve with silk thread that would outlive our conversation. He paid. He left. Eliza didn't appear again with a bag of wool or a bottle. A messenger collected the waistcoat that had belonged briefly to a version of her that believed she could catch herself mid-fall and land gracefully. She sent no note. She didn't need to. The pocket inside told me everything, empty but finger-warmed, a place that still remembered a key. Sometimes late, when the street outside rubs its eyes and the city yawns in the language of delivery trucks, I run my hand along the bolt of black barathea that started all this and think about the shape of permission. I have learned to draw patterns that anticipate the breath people take when they finally admit what they want. I still keep my rules. I don't sew for men who would use a tucked pocket as a weapon. I don't bring strangers into my bed or clients into my lies. I say wanting before I say sorry. I am not a saint. Saints make terrible lovers and worse tailors. I close my shop the way I open it, ritual as religion. Scissors in their velvet bed, chalk wrapped in waxed paper, the iron's cable coiled like a sleeping animal. I turn off the lights in the order the room prefers. Workroom first, then window, then the little brass lamp that makes the mannequins look almost kind. I lock the door with a key that sits heavy in my hand and wear my tape home around my neck like a private vow. On mornings when the sun finds the dust and makes it holy, I sometimes find a single long dark hair caught on a pin cushion. It is no one's hair and everyone's. I roll it between finger and thumb and let it go. The bell announces the next body that wants to try on a better story. I lift my tape and begin again. Neck, shoulder, chest, the inch under the arm where public turns private. Breathe, I say, and they do, and the cloth forgives what I'm careful enough to learn.